Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jordan Edwards with Clockedin Podcast, the host, and I'm super excited because we're heading over to my latest podcast with Chon Nguyen. He is the founder of Newgentek. He owns restaurants like Rooster and the Tail, a couple of the ones in Sparkman Wharf, and Nebraska Mini Market, and it's going to be a very exciting podcast, so let's head in there. Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest today. We have Chon Nguyen. He's the founder of Newgentek. He's co-founder in Fusion Prep, and he's also a founder or a partner in the Proper House Group, which has 6 restaurants. Chon, how are we doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to be here, be in your office. And where did this all begin? Where did your journey start for you?
I was just a nerd growing up. I just loved technology from the time I can remember. Started making a little bit of money, doing some side hustles when I was in high school. Got a Microsoft certification, and then just kind of started starting businesses. And yeah, here I am now, 20 plus years later.
That's awesome. And so just doing a light math, so 20 plus years. When did you graduate high school?
2001.
Okay, so the computer was like kind of coming around, like.
Internet had been. I grew up with the internet in high school, but before that it was America Online and BBSs, which is really dating me. But that was kind of prior to the internet, kind of how people would communicate. That was all on dial-up modems. So I've been around for a while. Yeah.
No, I wasn't even trying to age you. It was just kind of like, how did you know to kind of jump in there? Because in high school, I feel like a lot of people are like sports, girls, trying to just go to college, like many deviated focuses. So it's like, how did you even find and stumble upon this?
I think, much like now, I think, social network, like, BBSs and the internet, and I mean, it all sort of stemmed around communication and bringing people together. And so that was of interest to me, and I just kind of felt like it felt like there was a lot of possibility around technology, and then I started making some money, and that was obviously of interest to me. And business was always of interest to me. I was around it. My dad, had a business, and so did his friends, and so I kind of just saw that path, and it was exciting and interesting to me.
Absolutely. And what was that like growing up with your dad as an entrepreneur, right? Or
yeah.
was he?
I mean,
car dealerships, right?
yeah, he's in the car business. It was interesting. I mean, he wasn't home a lot, so I think that probably instilled a strong work ethic in me. Watching him do that. I think seeing him do something that he loved to do. So I think he was at work not because it was a job, but because he really enjoyed doing it. And then when he started building his own thing, I think you really saw him, start to enjoy that. And so that probably rubbed off on me.
Absolutely. And what was that own thing that he was jumping into and like that transition for him?
It's still in the automotive business. He had like a auto auction. He did RV. He had an RV dealership. And yeah, until the time my parents got divorced when I was 18, and he actually moved back to Thailand. But he, I watched him do that kind of my whole life growing up.
So he had the serial entrepreneur gene as well.
Definitely, yeah. And a lot of his friends did too. So I mean, they had their own dealerships, and they were, some were doing like wholesaling cars. So that's like a very hustle mentality. They're flipping cars all the time, and so I'd watch that happen, and yeah, so yeah.
So with you, where did it rub off in the regard of like, you're like in high school, I was making money.
Yeah.
Most people are like, I worked at an ice cream shop
yeah.
or as a camp counselor.
I was lucky in that, my parents, they supported my interests a lot. So, I have kids now, and so I'm always telling them like, don't be on your screens all the time, and trying to limit them. I don't know. I guess that's just like as a parent, what you feel like you need to be doing. But I was very independent, and they sort of let me do my own thing and explore my interests. They supported it financially. So
that's huge.
So if if I wanted a new computer or I wanted the newest modem or they had to pay $7,000 when I was in high school, so a long time ago, for me to get a Microsoft certification.
Oh, wow.
and it was foreign to them, so they were sort of taking the advice of a 16-year-old kid that this was valuable and of interest and to me, and for whatever reason I think they were just they supported it and kind of set me on the path, I think.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about lighting you up, or like how your dad got lit up when he was kind of doing his own thing. What is that feeling like, and then how do you know if you have that, just for the audience? Because there's many people right now working 9 to 5s, and then on the side they're trying to do their thing, and you're like,
yeah,
is this it? Am I there?
Yeah, it's certainly I would describe it as a passion. I think you see that in people that have something that they're interested in, and then I think that in turn will help you develop a skill that then fuels your passion even more. So it kind of becomes a cycle. If you find something that you enjoy spending your time on, where it doesn't feel like it's work, you're going to naturally spend time around it, which is going to make you better at it. And so that's what it was for me. That's what I kind of saw in him. I think when I think of my other sort of creative friends or people that are doing their own thing, it's really the same, that spark and that fire. You almost have to have it, because the amount of time and energy that you will need to put into something to be successful, or to grow something from nothing, or it's just a almost insurmountable lift. And it's not something you can easily teach too, because it's like you go into a sort of this being naive about it. If you knew how hard it was going to be while you were before you did it, you probably wouldn't do it,
Absolutely. And it's funny, because if you start thinking about, everyone's like, is it worth your time? Is it worth your value? And you're like, in the beginning, like for me, for example, I'm doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And we're 120 episodes in. So if you just do 120 hours, then you do the prep work. Now let's call it another 2 hours per guest, hour per guest, whatever it is. You're almost 400 hours into this thing, and you're like, is it worth it? I don't know. And I'm paying out every single month for the hosting platform, for the clips, for the camera guy, for everything. And you're like, are you learning something? You just get that process, because you really look at it and you're like, I am making less money than a minimum wage worker, but it doesn't matter, because you're building up such a platform where you're like, hey, this is something I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
And no one can take that feeling away from you, where it's, wow,
yeah,
that is something I did, and that was something I felt. Have you felt that? Obviously you felt that before, but
yeah, it almost feels, to me it feels like I guess I've been doing this over 30 years now, right? But it feels like a 30-year overnight success. I can't remember, I can't think of a time where you start to make money and obviously do well for yourself, but there wasn't a day where I was like, oh, now everything is working.
Everything's changed.
Yeah, I've sort of been running at the same pace since I can remember, since I was a kid, and then I guess it just happens one day. You start to get payback and return on it. But each business is discrete. So that happened. As I was building Fusion Prep, that business has been around for 10 years now, but it really didn't start kind of growing exponentially and consistently, probably until 5 years into it,
Yeah. And that's the craziest thing, because people don't realize, they look at you and go, must be nice.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, dude, don't must be nice.
Yeah, he's got it good. Yeah.
He's got it good. He can do whatever he wants. Money's not, and it's just don't do that. There was a lot of time that you sat there and watched TV while he was thinking about the idea, or working on the idea, or putting it into action.
Yeah.
So where did that start for you? Because I understand you get the Microsoft certification, and that's senior year of high school, or around that?
When I was 16, so I guess sophomore year, summer, yeah.
And then where did the money component start coming in? What did you do?
I started, so my dad had his business, so I started kind of doing some consulting for him, of course, and then and so he would pay me hourly, and then some people he knew would pay me hourly. And I think when I was in high school, it was $75 an hour or something, and so I just realized really quickly like I was making way more money than my friends were. And I had a job at the Y. I volunteer at the Y. I'm on the board now, so the Y was a big part of my life. But I worked there. But I knew that my passion was in technology, really. So
yeah, and if you have a skill set that most people don't have, then you can go,
right. Yeah.
What's the price?
Yeah.
Who else is going to do this?
Yep.
It's only me.
Yeah.
Which makes a big difference. But it also helped that you were in that epicenter of your dad and his friends who were entrepreneurial, who were open to have. Because, I mean, the thing is, if you're just around if your parents were employees, it can be a different jump.
Yeah.
Than you being, because they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
This is so foreign.
For sure, yeah.
Like you're kind of like a second generation entrepreneur. Like no one talks about it, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, and maybe I think that it certainly can't hurt to have somebody to. I mean, that's why mentors and everything.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So who do you think were some mentors that kind of advised you coming up? Obviously, you have your parents, your family, but like going through the difficult decisions of like, do I go to college? Do I not go to college? Like, I mean, obviously you were intelligent. Like,
yeah. I mean, I had I don't know. I really early on was just like a super curious kid, and I spent a lot of time with adults. Like I would try to understand what they were doing, whether it's my teachers, my bosses at the Y, and I'm still in contact with a lot of them. Like my teachers and old bosses. Like we stay in touch on Facebook and LinkedIn. So early on, I think the relationships were really important. To me, that's a skill that I think is been really helpful. I had one of my first clients. He was a real estate developer. He's since passed away, but he kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot. And I would ask difficult, probably probing personal questions that he probably wasn't used to hearing early on, and he would answer them and I would learn, and I would, he would introduce me to people. I'd latch onto them, and that kind of just came naturally to me. I don't even know what that was, but I think I just got it. I think it was just a curiosity, probably.
Absolutely. So I heard you say on another podcast that's the Seanism.
Yeah.
And I laughed because I have the same issue.
Yeah.
And that's the sole reason that I made the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I want to talk to people, but half the people I can't get in the room because they're like, what are you doing? Like, who are you? What are you? And I'm like, come on, let's talk. I want to hear your story.
Yeah.
And the podcast was that perfect platform. So I would say most people who are podcasters have a very similar experience because it's this thing where we're seeking something, but at the same time, we just don't know where to get it.
Yeah.
Like we're a human, we need water, we don't know where the water is.
Yep.
And that's the same idea of like trying to be successful or trying to quote unquote like make it or whatever it is or build a business. You got to get around those people.
Yeah.
And to learn from them.
Definitely. Yep.
And so where has that curiosity led you in regard to after high school?
I think it's probably like a pillar of success. I mean, because it helps from a relationship standpoint. It helps from by being curious and asking questions. That was, again, the genesis for Fusion Prep. It's, asking people what they're struggling with. How can I help? And so, that helped me there. Managed IT, which is what Newgentek does, it is the same thing, right? We're sort of augmenting and helping people with their IT strategy, but you're an extension of their business and sort of listening to their challenges and figuring out how technology can solve it. And then the restaurant business is the same thing. You're providing experiences and listening to what people need and want, and developing concepts, experiences around that. So. Yeah, the curiosity is I think has been really instrumental to my growth and development and success for sure.
Absolutely, and I think one of the coolest things about what you do is that you sit there and you get pretty much real-time feedback from people.
Yeah.
Like with Newgentek, the concept, if I'm right, or if this is correct, you basically go in there, you'll get clients, and then you learn, and you're like they're outsourced IT, but you're like insourced.
That's right. We're outsourced. So for customers that don't have an IT department or that have a really small IT department, we function as their IT department.
And what's the target size of like? And is that the first business?
I had another business prior to this that I sold. I had a partner, but I probably spend the bulk of my time at Newgentek. Yeah.
And how'd you get started with that? Was that the same one that started in high school? And like,
yeah, that was kind of the evolution of break fix IT services, which is like somebody's computer's broken, they call you, to transitioning to like managed IT, which is more contract based recurring revenue, recurring services. And so Newgentek now is a managed IT provider, which is a lot of them are out there. But the way we're different is that we kind of go a little wider and deeper. So we're almost a hybrid MSP and systems integrator. So we do like conference rooms, huddle spaces, low voltage cabling, network infrastructure deployments. We do a lot of.
So you'll set up everything.
Everything, yeah. So yeah, from rooms like this to hey, I can't print. So it's and we do that for kind of middle market and below. We don't have a lot of like enterprise customers. They have their own department, yeah. And so, but for kind of the middle market, which are still massive businesses, we provide them with services.
It's a ton of value and it's recurring revenue.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is one of the things that we talked about in the very beginning, because you're like, once I learned about that business model.
That's right. It's addicting. Yeah.
Things change.
Yeah.
Things change. And if people don't know, what is recurring revenue? What does that even mean?
It's just, we call it, MRR is, monthly recurring. That's like a KPI that you would see on all, dashboards across all my companies besides the restaurants. But it just gives you that predictable cash flow. So, you close a contract, you can expect X dollars a month and, you fulfill that. And so, as opposed to kind of eat what you kill. If you're doing a services-based business, you're having to sell every month. We still do that, but it sort of compounds and grows.
Yeah, because the concept is as people grow, as you get more clients, let's go simple numbers. Everybody's $1,000. You have 10 of them, now it's 10,000, and overhead and everything costs is the same.
Yeah.
So now it costs us 4,000, so we're making 6,000 a month.
Yep. And then in the case of Newgentek and Fusion Prep, there's some unit economics involved too, so you get some organic growth as well. So let's say a customer has 100 employees. In some cases they're paying per employee per month.
Oh wow.
And so if they're on a hiring spree, they'll do that, right? And then so that's one unit economic for Newgentek. We do a lot of technology deployments, and so this is not recurring revenue, but we call it predictable revenue. But if one of our customers added 40 new restaurants, centers, whatever the type is, but a year, and so we can then forecast that out. And the same thing with Fusion Prep on the SaaS side, software as a service is there's the unit economics there are that if they're adding 40 restaurants a year and you're their tool of choice, that account is going to
grow.
Grow.
It's no brainer.
Yeah.
No, it's huge because once you're involved with people, then you're riding on their success.
That's right.
Because you help them.
Yeah. Providing value. Yeah.
It's funny because most people want to be there and be like, I'm the value, I'm the thing. And it's like, do you view helping people as one of the biggest, like, it's one of the best ways to do it, because when we view business as like, it's a me thing, like I'm accomplishing this instead of, no, we're all accomplishing this together. It brings a more community environment too. And like, I remember in our intro call, I was telling you about some of the people I podcast with, you're like, client. You're like, I own restaurants, but I help a lot of restaurants too. And people have no idea.
Yeah. The whole notion of, having it be about yourself, that's like that was like I want to say early lesson. It was like early in my career, but for so long I didn't do this. But, if you look at back, like my original advertising and marketing was like my face, and so when the business started to scale, like they were like a realtor almost, when the business started to scale, and somebody other than me didn't show up, or somebody would make a recommendation and say Sean's your guy, and then I would send Brandon, and he would show up. Not that they didn't like him, but they were expecting Sean, the man, right? And so that was like a branding kind of exercise that I quickly fixed once I realized it was a problem. But
and what was that experience? The experience of this scale, because you're going from high school. I understand you had a couple of jobs in between, but like you're trying to do this as a solopreneur.
Yeah.
And then we see, I mean, we're in this big office. There's a lot of seats here. It's impressive.
Yeah. That's like the hardest part. I mean, taking it from like lifestyle businesses are great too. And
what do you qualify a lifestyle business?
Like a solopreneur
Okay.
or, one person kind of and I think, you would recognize pretty quick, and especially if it's a time for money thing, right?
Okay.
I mean, so if you look at the business model, back then before when I started, we weren't doing the MRR wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So it was, $85 an hour. You can quickly do the math. You have one resource, that's yourself. How many hours can you bill a week? Like you can squeeze that. There was like some tricks you can do to optimize that, but at a certain point, it's just it's gonna break. You're capping yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so scaling that is hard. And then when you're a one-man show, it's like when do you almost have to take a step back and make less money to spend, that's it, on the business the business thing, right? Like, so am I going to take a step back and add another resource and pay them? Well, I'm going to get paid less then, right? And so that whole phase of the of growth is hard. I think a lot of people stumble there, and then it just gets into like all sorts of different problems and challenges too. More people, more problems is how that typically goes. But that initial step of kind of going from the one to more
someone
than one
else,
person, is tough. So.
And what was that like for you? Like, at what stage in your life were you there? Like, because it's always so tough when people go through businesses. Some people start them right in high school. Some people start in college. Some people are in their 50s and they're like,
yeah,
I got a kid in college. I'm trying to make some extra money. How do I do it? A real estate invest? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's that jump. That's how where were you at?
I mean, I think the sad part is, and some of this is around, the way our country is structured too. But like the sad part is because the younger you are, the more risk you can take. Obviously, you don't
Absolutely.
have, you don't have a family, you don't have a mortgage, you have less bills. I think that is getting harder as the cost of everything increases too, right? But if you, when I see someone that has been in a career for a long time, or I was just having drinks with someone the other night, and he has had a great career, C-level executive, but we were talking kind of the same way you and I are about my story, and he's like, I wish like I would have, early on, I wish I would have done my own thing. It's like one of the biggest regrets. And he has kids.
Really?
His kids that are 20 and in their 20s, and but during the time to raise his kids and to be able to step away and say, I'm going to do it myself, and how am I going to have health insurance for my family, right? And so it just gets so much harder the longer you wait to take risks like that. And it's sad to sit across from someone and hear that,
Oh, absolutely. And it's a fascinating thing because we all get one life, and we all have to figure out whatever that is. And the thing is that people want it to be instant. It's this or that.
That's right.
And why can't it be an and? I mean, what do you think about that concept? Because there's so many people, and like we were talking about before, the gig economy.
Yeah.
Like there's people that work 9 to 5s and then they do other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great, if you're going to do something, the best way to do it is to, I think, to remain employed. You could go on Instagram any time of the day and hear people telling you that same thing, and I don't disagree. I mean, you certainly wouldn't want to, if you can build something and not, leave the stability and continue to, don't quiet quit on them, but like, continue to do your job in an effective way. I think that's great. And you see people sort of dip in their, like, people do Airbnbs or have little side hustles, and I think that's good. And if that makes them happy, then great. The regret and the comparison thing is interesting to me. That same guy that I was telling you about, it's sad that he has regret about not doing his own thing. But it's even like he probably is harder on himself than he should be because he had an excellent career. I mean, he's an elite. In terms like he has reached has been an executive at very large companies and should be very proud of what he built, but still looks back and says like woulda, coulda, shoulda, and
well, that's the most interesting thing because when I started, it was I went to University of Tampa, graduated, got this job, and it's this idea of like I look up and everyone's like look up and like see what everyone's doing, and you're looking up and you're like
the secret is looking down.
These people are not like people. It's so interesting because like people struggle. We're pushed to believe stuff, especially with everything going on right now, and it's like you have to sit like sometimes I'm like you just have to go experience it yourself. Like if you want to tell me a country is not good, then you should go there and visit it.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, you always want to like it's people complain like if you want to. The only way to know for me is to see it for myself. There was like there was all of this issues with like policing, right? And so like people were complaining about the police, and so I like signed up and did Citizens Police Academy because I'm like I want to like if everyone's complaining about about this, like I'm gonna go do it. And it was like 11 weeks of like once a week you go to like a different area with the city of Tampa and like see how they're doing it, and you leave there with like this such a deep understanding of what happens. Same thing with education. I'm passionate about public education, so I do CEOs in schools. I am on the board at the Hillsborough Education Foundation. Like I don't appreciate when people complain or form uneducated opinions when it's so easy to like you're so close to like go look. You're right, like
100%. And the thing is that like that, and with that one tip, what ends up happening is you stop complaining.
That's right.
Because you have no idea about anything.
Now you know. Yeah, you're not ignorant, right?
Or or you're just like, I there's too many things going on. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Which is the best part because there's so many different things. And like for you mentioned that you're on boards, you run the businesses. Like for me, I have the Edwards Consulting, which is a coaching group, and it's got 5 pillars. It's mental health, physical health, community service, philanthropy, spirituality, and relationships. I've looked at your life, like just from a kind of a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
It seems like you do pretty well on a lot of, like, how do you think you do that? Because you're on the boards, you run the business, you look physically fit. Like, I don't know if you got lucky, but like.
Yeah, I eat a lot of restaurants, but yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's about, it's balance for sure. And it ebbs and flows. Like, you're, you can't have it all the time, I think. So that's like if you think about like work-life balance or anything like that, like those pillars that you described are so important, but you're certainly not 10 out of 10 all the time in all of them. And so it's just a constant adjustment and tweaking and the real probably, I think you probably experience this as a coach. I think the hardest part for people is that mental aspect and giving themselves grace when they're not the 10 out of 10, right? And I'm really good at that. Like I'm not hard on myself at all, and I think that's like a skill that I think is kind of like a little cheat code or a hack, because people I think get in their own way all the time.
That's incredible because you need to realize that we're never gonna get to that point.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that 10 out of 10, it's an ideal.
That's right.
It's an ideal that we can achieve, but we're never gonna get there.
Yeah.
So it takes time to reach those points. And some months we might be a 10 in physical health. Some months we might be a 3.
Yeah.
That's okay as long as we realize and readjust.
For sure.
Yeah. So these ideals. So you mentioned that you leave grace in your life.
Yeah.
And you're not too hard on yourself, but yet you've accomplished so much.
Yeah.
How does one do that? Because it's hard not to be tough on yourself. You know what I mean? It's just a double-edged sword. How do you?
Yeah. I have high standards. It's I have very high standards in most things that I do, but I think it's it's not realistic to it's not productive, I guess, to sort of beat yourself up about it, because I recognize that it's not, perfect is an unattainable goal, but the journey to perfect is what I think I focus on, right? So what are the 3 things today that I can impact? I'm like very good at. I'm not religious, but the Lord's Prayer is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I live that. It's so if that's out of my control, it doesn't
bother you.
Yeah, it flows right off. Yeah.
I completely agree, because the realization was, I don't know if you ever heard of him, Jocko Winnick.
Yeah.
He had this book that he wrote, and it was
Extreme Ownership, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
And I read it, and I was like, holy moly. Like, you have this realization that you're like, I control my own life.
Yeah.
I am the dictator of everything, and I'm in this position right now because of everything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it's not my parents, it's not my teachers, it's not the boss, it's all me.
Yeah.
And once you have that accountability and that ownership of like, dude, whatever happens, it's my fault, everything goes away. And like you said, the uncontrollables, I don't even think about.
Yeah. So many times people will come to you with a problem, like as a leader, and they'll come to you as a problem, and like the first thing I say is, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, right? What would you do about it? Like, I have solutions. I can probably come up with solutions faster just because of experience, but you want to get them in that mindset of like, what are we going to do? Is meaning like, what do you have control over here? Right?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah.
And it's massive, because the thing is that for them to sit there, explain the entire scenario, and then give you, hey, they could just say, hey, I'd probably do this, but they want to get your approval because they don't want to make a mistake.
That's right.
So how do you find the ability to empower leaders in Newgentek and Fusion Prep and these different companies that you're running? Because you have to trust so many partners, and you have to trust all these different people.
Yeah, I think you want to get part of it's your personality. Like it doesn't come easy, I think, to most entrepreneurs, operators. If you have high standards, you typically normally you want to try to control for all of those things. So it is an adjustment and learning curve there. Like I also have friends that that own businesses that I'd say probably have some opportunities around that, and like you want to, especially when you're functioning at a high level. Like if you think about a fine dining establishment as an example, for that to happen every night at a high level, the amount of control and precision is most people just have no idea about the level of detail that goes into it. And so someone like that, it's a challenge for those sort of operators that are dealing with complex systems to sort of step back and let people make mistakes, because it's they're high stakes and high risk. But if you don't do that, like you'll never scale. People don't get developed. You'll just it makes the business dependent on you being there, right? And that's not good for scale and growth either. So yeah.
Well, the point you're bringing up is something that I've heard before, and I forget who it was, but there's this idea of the hustler. And in the beginning, everyone's the hustler, because you're like, we got to get more accounts, we got to get more recurring revenue, we got to get all these things.
Yep.
And then you have to transition to the CEO, and they're like, we have to kill off the hustler.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you kill off the like? That is what built me. That is what brought me to my level of where I'm at, my understanding. And now I have to go sit back and go, good luck to my people. Like, it's a very difficult experience, but sounds like you are managing through that experience. And how's that kind of been for you? Is that why you it seems like you find new opportunities to be the hustler in different areas?
Yeah. I still and sales is a hustle in and of itself.
Of course.
Right? So you can still find ways to scratch that itch, but as the business scales, the skills that you need, the adage of the people that got you here will not get you there. Sometimes like in that. Some people's skill sets are good for a certain phase of the business and may not be good for another. Like understanding that about yourself, and so that's why I think the peer groups and development, doing some personal development is important, because like everything and just like life, there are different phases of a business too, and they require very different skill sets.
Have you always been into personal development, or is this more of a recent thing?
I would say I have always been into it. I've always I read a lot, and I consume a lot of content in general. So I'll read podcasts, videos, documentaries. I'm a news junkie, so yeah, I'm always sort of consuming things, and I guess that's a personal development. But now, like I'll read about stoicism and some of those things. Like I said, I'm not super religious, but like I find different sort of practices and insight. Like you always get something from whatever you're reading, like that or consuming. So I try to do that.
Absolutely, and what people don't realize is, they sit there, and I've heard this before, it's the 5 people you hang the most time around, like your 5 friends, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting concept is that people don't include the podcasts or the books they read.
That's right. Yeah.
And I sit there and I go, if someone listened to the same podcast host 100 times,
it's going to shape your worldview.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're in your top 5.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're like, oh, well, I never met him. You don't have to meet people in your top 5 in this generation.
Yeah.
You don't have to even know half the people, because in reality, we don't spend that much time with the same people over and over again. Like, we have our coworkers, we have our family, but if you even think about the family, it's like 2 hours in the morning, maybe an hour in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. Like, it's very difficult to mesh these lines together.
Yeah, for sure.
So I try to find things that will attack all 3 of them. Like, so for example, me and my brother, he's my only brother, we ran the New York City Marathon, and we raised money for colorectal cancer. So those were 3 different pillars of physical health, community service, and then relationships.
Yeah.
So with how many businesses you're running and all the stuff you're doing, are there activities you do or things you find where you can hit multiple pillars at the same time? Because I feel like at the level you're at, you have to be like, even you're hanging out with your friends, it's like, hey, we're talking business or we're doing something.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, if I'm out at night at another restaurant, obviously I may be, hanging out with a friend at a customer and, see somebody from CEO Council or so. There's a lot of sort of blurred line and mixing. If I'm at if I go to an event, sometimes I'll be badged as an operator, but a customer will come up to me and ask me a question about fusion prep, and so yeah, there's like a lot of blurred lines, but I sort of like that synergy, and it's almost like a constellation of companies, because there are shared things between all of them, but they also do separate things too. So.
Well, I think that's one of the coolest things, because like for me growing up, it was very interesting. It's like you're a policeman, you're a firefighter. You only keep this one identity, where as I grow up, I start to realize that you can flow, man.
Oh yeah.
You can flow, and I think that's one of the coolest things to realize, because once you realize that there's a flow occurring, you're like, whatever's good is good.
Yeah.
New opportunity, amazing. Let's talk about it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you view opportunities? Because I understand, like, how did Fusion Prep come to be? Because I know the story, but how does for the audience?
Yeah, so I had the business doing IT support for restaurants. The iPad had just come out. I was like pulling cable at this point in the business, so very much in the weeds, and so I was doing that, and I was in a kitchen. I'd never worked in a restaurant, or pretty much only was a customer and ate at them. But the chef was like, hey, we have 6 restaurants. We can't keep the recipes in sync across all of them because we're using these paper binders. If they had a location in Fort Myers. He's like, if I change a recipe, I have to send this laminated page to them. They have to put it in their binder. They might throw it out because they spilled sauce on it. And so I'll go down there, and they've been making the wrong recipe for 6 months. So the iPad came out, and he was like, it'd be cool if we could, maybe like mount one of these in the kitchen and then have everything up to date. And I was like, wow, we could probably do that. And my co-founder and I were, I told him about the idea. He's like, there's no way anybody will ever pay for that. I'm like, no, I think they will. Like, they literally just said it was a problem. And so we built out this really simple version in like a weekend. And put it in front of the chef, and he's like, yeah, this is what I want. And we're like, would you pay for it? And he was like, yeah, I would. And that was it. And the product started off as one thing of solving that one problem, and then we just kind of go wider and deeper and expand the feature set. And so now it does so much more, obviously. But the whole thing was listening for, this is my pain, this is how I can solve it, and that's the value creation machine right there. That's it.
I know, I love that, because people don't, I feel like when some people get on sales calls, they're like, oh, opportunity, let me go try to get them. And it's like, no, you have to look through things from their perspective.
Yeah.
And they go, this sucks. And you're like, okay, well, let's try to make it not suck.
Yep.
And finding those solutions. So for the audience listening, I just think it's so important, because you should view things from the other person's perspective and try to shoving it down their throat.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anyone any good.
And you want to celebrate or you want to sort of put that customer at the center of of everything you do. Like, Fusion Prep is for people in the kitchen, and so sales will teach you like customer personas and all these things, but it's really like that person, like you better really understand what their day-to-day is and who their stakeholders are and who they need to please, and what makes them successful. Like, you got to go deep, because that's where the value is. Same thing in Newgentek. Like, for like our customers are people that are doing jobs, and so how can we make their life easier, reduce their stress levels, make them look better to their boss, right?
Yeah.
Like, because when you do that, that's like,
what's the value?
That's it. And they'll take you with them when they eventually leave, because they do all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so like they'll leave to go to another company, and if you do your job right and that relationship is strong,
the retention.
Yeah, and you'll probably keep the old one too. So yeah.
And then how do you manage the three different so when you were going through this business process, you bring in the co-founder. Did you not want to do it on your own, or did he provide some value, or she, or like how did that all work?
We had been friends growing up, and he was a programmer, and I do not code, and so
so massive difference. So it works out perfectly.
Yeah, so I kind of like had the vision for the product and what it would look like, and so he coded it, and I always mess with him now, because like when he said like nobody will pay for it, and it's ended up being great for our families, and I was like every now and then I'll say like I bet you're glad we did that, right? Like, just remind him, but. Yeah.
And then you run all these businesses and everything's completely separate, like because basically my thought is like I know we're winding it down, but coming up with COVID, I sit there and like restaurants were closed, things were open, so there's probably money coming in for some accounts, some money stopping, and it's just like, do you pull from different businesses? Like, it's just, how do you handle situations at that magnitude? It's like,
it was scary, I think, but it wasn't. I've been through obviously not a global health issue, but like I've hit some bumps before, so it wasn't. It was a scary time. At that time, the customer concentration at Newgentek was high, so it was like 70% hospitality, which is not the case anymore. Fusion Prep is 100% hospitality, and then obviously the restaurants. And so if you look at like the Chon Nguyen enterprise in terms of hospitality exposure, it was not a comfortable place to be. But and then so since then at Newgentek, I've diversified that so that hospitality number makes up a much smaller piece of the business. And so like if that happened again, which knock on wood it doesn't, we'd have some resiliency built in. But
because it's something to think about and change. And so how do you think about change? Because I feel like you're it's a growing business, but you're still like a nimble guy where you're like, we can pivot, no worries.
I think I'm very much a what's next person, and so I think about growth all the time. So in the businesses, Newgentek is, we are investing heavily in everything, all pieces of the business, sales, marketing, operations, and that's just, it's in scale, it's in scale mode right now, growth, and Fusion Prep, we have a really robust product roadmap, so we have a bunch of new features that are coming out, some that just continue to build value for the existing customers, some that add revenue, so sort of like some ancillary like sort of businesses that are areas of revenue we could sell to our current customers. And then at the restaurants, we have 3 new restaurants that are under construction, so like we're I try to keep it moving.
Yeah, you keep it busy. And is there anything that causes you to, because a lot of people are feared of inflation and all these different things going on in the economy, how do you keep the ship moves on? How do you keep that mindset, and has that always been with you?
Yeah, I think you want to always be contingency planning and thinking about like you model the world, right? Like, so like if this happens, this is how I would respond. I do a lot of that sort of exercise and thinking, and it's not like fear or anxiety inducing, but it's just you want to make sure you have a plan or some ideas on ways you respond. But generally speaking, I mean, I am expecting it to be a turbulent 12 to 24 months, but I think there's always opportunity. I mean, so and likely the need to outsource will continue to grow. I think at the restaurant side, people might be a little more value conscious, so how can you create some offers there? So there are always sort of levers you can pull to keep things moving.
No, I love that approach, because it's so much better than people sitting there. I'm on the sidelines now.
Yeah,
you can't be on the sidelines. You got to make something happen.
You're in the game. Yeah,
you got to go out there, and the game is the destination.
Yeah.
So for you, I know we mentioned this earlier, your work-life balance. How do you manage that? You talked about going into like kind of different sprint modes, but how do you kind of manage that?
It's not balanced, and it never has been. And so it's when it comes to like my kids and my wife and family, it's really a quality over quantity. I don't work a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. I have something most nights of the week. So I'm gone, but like I'll I try to take my kids in the morning when I can. Sometimes I'll pick them up and run them home before I go to dinner or a happy hour or a night event, to try to just squeeze in time where I can. The weekends, I try to, like, if I go to visit my partners at the restaurants, like I'll bring the kids with me to kind of hang out and expose them to it. So you just try to get it in where you can. Again, I think like if it's important to me that they see me doing something that I love to do, and then another reason why the balance doesn't happen from the outside looking in probably is because I love what I do. So it's not, this is like it would be equivalent of a hobby for most people. Like I don't play golf. I go visit my partners at the restaurants, or so it is relaxing to me, if that makes sense in a weird way. But
no, it definitely does, and I think I appreciate the honesty, because it's very difficult, because I prescribe to this, and it's very interesting where it's like, hey, like, you need to be home for dinner, or you got to be doing this, and it's like, okay, we do that, then what?
Yeah.
And now you're watching TV for 2 hours, and that's not quality.
Yeah.
Like, maybe going to the movies might be more quality, but it's not. It's just a very interesting line, because when you really sit there and do a real audit of your day, you're like, what was the point of that? Like, for example, I went out to dinner with someone on Wednesday, and then it was Passover for me. I'm Jewish, and we went to go see the rabbi, and my girlfriend's like, I don't know, and I'm like, no, you'll like it. She's like, okay, 1 hour. We're there for an hour, and she's like, I don't want to leave, and I'm like, we gotta go. You told me an hour. I don't want you to feel that way, but it's just like, once people are experiencing what you're experiencing, and that's where we're talking about the multiple pillars. Like, you have your kids at the restaurant doing the thing, like, that's beautiful, because they're getting exposure like your father did for you.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh wait, daddy sells stuff, daddy owns restaurants, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing. For sure. And I think that helps them a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one last piece, what do you recommend for people? What do you think people can do if they're sitting in a place where they want to start a business but they're not really sure what to do?
I would say reach out, like try to network and reach out to as many people as you can. I mean, that is, that your network is your network or whatever, is very true. Or to your point, the 5 people that you hang out with and spend time with. But if you are interested in something, like get as close to it as you can. Like talk, like make sure you're reaching out to people that have done it before and can sort of guide you and help you understand what it took to get there. So I think networking is good. Any reading and consuming content and self-development that you can, investing in yourself is the best way to to sort of head towards growth and then just doing it. It's like there's no. It's hard to sort of teach. I'll go speak to people at USF or like at that entrepreneur program. Like it's very hard to outline this in theory. Like it's the best way is to talk about it and understand, but the best way is to do it yourself. Like, and that's like contradicts probably everything that people would understand. Like they're not ready, or I'll do it when I have this much saved, or once I want to buy my house and then I'll do it, or you sort of put these things ahead of it. But if you want to do it, just
start.
Yeah, I always think about what happened. Like not that I'm not like a plan B person, but I think about if everything went away, would you still be happy? And so that, like, for me, from a risk perspective, that that sort of guides me and grounds me, and like if I'd be fine if I had to start over, because I like I enjoy doing it so much, So.
Yeah, and you brought up 2 major things. The happiness thing, where you're going on this journey to figure out who you are and what you enjoy, which I think is one of the most important things. And then the other thought was, you're like, make sure you read and listen up, and just get connected with people. The thing that got me into reading and got me listening to podcasts was, do I BS with my friend for 20 minutes or do I listen to Elon Musk?
Yeah.
And it's like, Elon Musk, like,
yeah.
I can learn something. And that's how you get excited about these different books and these different topics. But I completely agree that it's a happiness game.
Yep.
And we all have, especially in America, I would say, we have winning decks.
Yeah.
Everyone's already got a winning deck. You're fine. Like, if you have food, shelter, clothing, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's just, what do you make of that? And Chon, this has been amazing. And where can people reach you? Where can they find you? I'm
at Chon Nguyen, ChonNguyen on Instagram. I think I might be private, but and then Newgentek.com, fusionprep.com, and properhousegroup.com.
Yeah, we'll drop all those links in the bio. And also, I know some people listening are from Tampa. Sparkman Wharf, we're going to want to hit those restaurants. Rooster in the Till. Just look at the Proper House website. You'll find the places to go. And reach out to Chon and let him know how good it was.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Dude.